because there's so many of them, like when they break out microeconomics in a facile attempt to debunk socialist economics. But there's one which is rather pernicious and wrong, which I think is worth refuting. Libertarians argue that centrally planned economies always fail. Probably the first argument of this type was advanced by Ludwig von Mises.
Okay, so you at least will talk about the economic calculation problem. Maybe this is where I come up, because I do have one of, if not the most popular, pro-ECP videos on YouTube. Let me just check if it's still up there. Look at economic calculation problem, 180k, 41k, 15k, 6.9k, 238k, 685k. I mean, that's looking pretty good. I've beat out Second Thought. Yeah, definitely up there. So maybe this is where I come in. Maybe.
Which is the calculation problem. Basically, he stated that the government under central planning has so many prices to set, and the information...
No. It's not that it has so many prices to set that it just can't manage. It's that it has no means by which to efficiently allocate resources, right? If you have socialist commonwealth, then you don't have prices, meaning you do not have exchange, meaning, or maybe those go the other way around, meaning you cannot perform profit-loss calculations, meaning there is no way to economize. It's not that there's just so many prices they'll never get to them all. That's never been Mises' claim. Never. Just look up economic calculation problem on YouTube. You'll find my video, man.
Required to make these changes rationally is so limited or incomplete, or there is simply too much of it.
No. Mises explicitly says, well, let's imagine, he gives the socialists the strongest possible case. Let's imagine that everybody running the Central Planning Bureau is an angel who's not going to do anything bad. Let's imagine they have perfect access to all of the wants of every consumer. You can grant both of those things, and the economic calculation problem still holds. This is not difficult to access. That is what is being talked about. It's really not. It's really not difficult to access that information. For an expert like this guy, he should fucking know better.
That you will inevitably get shortages and misallocation of resources. On the surface, this seems to be true. The Soviet Union in its early days faced a great deal of economic hardship, which prompted Lenin to establish the New Economic Policy, or NEP. It broke away from the nationalization of all businesses.
Yeah, he really always put it down there. No private ownership means no exchange, means no price formation discovery, means no initial input data to calculate. Yeah, I've said, I gave like a very similar structure of the argument in the video. I believe I got it from Jonathan Newman, actually. He's come up twice now. But yeah, that's a very bare bones but accurate summary of Mises' essay. And this guy's not even approaching that.
And instead allowed small and medium proprietors control over their enterprises on a for-profit basis. Lenin described the aim of this program as a temporary measure intended to bring Russia into the capitalist stage of development, after which point the pursuit of socialism could begin. It wasn't so much a break from historical materialism or a sign of the weakness of socialist economics as a manifestation of its doctrine, which states that socialism is a subsequent stage of capitalist productive relationships and cannot occur in backward
But is it not a vindication of capitalism still?
countries, such as those that existed immediately surrounding the Russian Revolution. Stalin eventually broke with the NEP in the beginning of his rule and began rapidly collectivizing the economy. Russia was still comparatively backwards under Stalin, and it still faced famines and shortages, which libertarians often point to as evidence that socialism doesn't work. However, by the 1960s, these problems were ironed out for the most part, and the Soviet system was nominally working pretty.
Do we perhaps remember a certain policy of the Soviet Union where they looked towards external prices to manage their internal economy? Do we perhaps remember that happening? I remember that happening. I've read the history of the Soviet Union, as this guy has, of course, because you know he read all the history, and that's why he stopped being an ancap. I suppose, what is his explanation on that point? That socialism was just so good, but it still needed capitalist prices to understand scarcity. is that the claim?
Well, it wasn't as prosperous or productive as the West, of course, but measures of the average calorie.
No, what an understatement. What an understatement. Let me just pull something up here. Yeah, these guys, they're just not quite as prosperous as the West. You know, they have to line up for moldy bread every day, bare bones rations. They're just not quite as prosperous as the West, though. Don't worry about it.
Intake by Soviet citizens were well over what was required for adequate nutrition. The notion that Soviets were always in a state of deprivation and starvation is nonsense.
No, it's not. Actually not. Listen to accounts from the Soviet Union. Read We the Living, account from a survivor of the Soviet Union, Ayn Rand. Look at these things. Look up at Prax Ben. He's got plenty of fucking studies on this shit. Sure, I could DM him and get some. It's really nonsense. And also, none of this attacks the economic calculation problem. You need an economic attack upon that. Not just, the Soviet Union, if you look at the card. None of that could ever possibly attack the economic calculation problem.
Now, this period in which the Soviet economy functioned was short-lived. By the late 80s, shortages were back, shelves were empty, and there were long lines in front of grocery stores and bakeries, what you might typically envision when you hear the phrase Soviet economy. This dire situation was not caused by central planning, however.
What was it caused by, perchance?
According to Vladislav Zubak's book,
Well, fucking Vladislav Zlublak says so. Let's hear what Vladislav Zlublak thinks.
Collapse, the beginning of the downturn was when Mikhail Gorbachev started decentralizing the economy.
Quick question. Why weren't the capitalists in an even worse place then? Because they had a much more decentralized economy than under Gorbachev. Just quick query there. Seems to throw a little bit of a wrench in that thesis. But I mean, fucking Gloopglabs Glozglov says it, so we've got to take it as true, because it's in a quote, guys. We don't have to justify anything in a quote, because he quoted it. So he read a book, or he looked up quotes about this, and he found the quote. It's in a quote, therefore it is true. This is slop. This is utter slop.
His efforts at quasi-liberalization were preceded by Brezhnev's policy of glasnost, which opened up the
But he just stopped trying to pronounce the Russian. Stop trying.
Policy of internal criticism of the Soviet system, as well
Cut out that take, man. Cut it out.
as later political opposition to the Communist Party. Records from the Stalinist era were opened up. Historians and journalists could now peer into them to reveal the scope of Stalin's depredations against the Russian people. Glasnost led to a wave of de-Stalinization, mainly inside the intelligentsia, and as such, there is now a chorus of voices proclaiming against the totalitarian aspects of the Soviet political system. Gorbachev, who had spent most of his life among the intelligentsia, along with his wife, was the foremost manifestation of the change Glasnost created. His first acts as a leader were to delegate control of industries to local councils, in effect demolishing the command economy.
Based if true for $5, thank you very much. This money is gold-backed and becomes sentient the minute you get it out of your account. Do you risk pooling money out of fear you'll violate the NAP? Yeah, no, he's referring to, there's a Twitter space yesterday, I believe it was. I suppose 2 days ago now, because it's past midnight, on people were trying to challenge me on my views on veganism. I think I came out pretty good on that space.
Economy. This led to economic chaos as information was not properly allocated, and as such, industries could no longer efficiently acquire resources nor understand how much and what to produce. Second, Gorbachev, who did not understand how Soviet financial systems worked, began collapsing the wall between the two Soviet currencies, leading to an inflation crisis. To understand why, you have to know that there are two kinds of currency in the Soviet Union. Biezno, which was used by businesses to acquire materials and the means of production, and the ruble, which was for use by individuals, such as their wages, pensions, etc. These currencies were, before Perestroika, separated. Biezno was a virtual currency, and the government created it merely by adding on some zeros on pieces of paper. Rubles, on the other hand,
What's that classic Hopper quote? Come on, Dolphin, be faster with your searches. Why didn't Dolphin just implement some fast searching algorithm like FD or something? It's always so goddamn slow. I don't get it. Somebody who knows more about Linux, can they explain to me why the graphical file browsers are so much slower in doing file searches than the terminal-based ones? I don't get it. Use the same fucking algorithm. I know the fucking name. Fucking video. Roll down. H for Hopper. Go. I'll put it in mem.
And I think it is very important in these replies to people like Krugman that we don't get involved in technical details but ask them questions almost like a child. Explain to me how an increase in paper pieces can possibly make a society richer. If that were the case, explain to me why is there still poverty in the world? Isn't every central bank in the world capable of printing as much paper as they want? And do you then think the society, the world as a whole would be richer? I'm sure the guy cannot answer this type of question. Nobody can answer this type of question. But again, we get far too much bogged down in answering technical details of his argument instead of always repeating this question. Please explain to me how a piece of paper can make society richer.
There you have it. That's my response to that. Oh, they can just print off more money.
And had to be printed. In this way, the Soviet State Bank could control the supply of currency in order to avoid inflation. They could raise Biesnel so as to facilitate production while not touching and thus not inflating the ruble. The price of consumer goods would not increase if the Soviet state decided to invest in industry through increasing the available funds. After Perestroika, Gorbachev, who, as I've stated, did not understand how the Biesnel system worked, deregulated the financial system, which led to a gradual interpenetration of Biesnel and the ruble. Businesses now sometimes bought things, and consequently, if the government wanted to provide money for industry, they now had to print rubles, which obviously would cause inflation. This continued until it reached a crisis level in 1990, eventually causing the economic downturn that contributed to the downfall of the Soviet Union. So as we can see, the main reason why the Soviet economy imploded had nothing to do with the system of...
Had nothing to do. Why were there any previous downturn? Why was there any previous poverty? It had nothing to do with the central planning. Nothing to do with the central planning. Why did that happen? Why were there red lines at all? Why weren't the Soviets fantastically wealthier than the West? Why didn't that happen?
Central planning. Rather, it was the deliberate demolition of that system by Gorbachev which caused it to collapse. As it turns out, when you try to demolish the way the centrally planned economy works, and when you end the central command in a command economy, it does indeed start to fail. However, given that it was working and apparently pretty stable in the 60s and 70s.
And again, where is this guy's argument against the economic calculation problem? Where does he tell us how you find the most value productive arrangement of the factors without price mechanisms? Where does he explain that? He hasn't yet.
I don't think we can conclude from the historical evidence that command economies always fail. Just like capitalism.
You know how we can conclude that? With the economic calculation problem. Please respond to it.
Economies, they fail under certain specific contextual circumstances, but we cannot just declare they never work. Despite the calculation problem, they were able to provide Soviet citizens with enough food to eat, and they're also capable of fielding the world's largest army as of 1980.
Is that a measure of prosperity? I was able to field 10 Gorillian slaves. Wow, you're so prosperous, bro.
Replete with cutting-edge armaments and technology for the time. Soviets even had enough money and resources to orbit the Earth and launch satellites, as well as to develop nuclear weapons.
Real quick question. Who won the space race? I believe it was the Americans. And real quick question. Who developed all of the physics in order to make nukes? I think that one also. What was that? The Soviets? No, I think it was the Americans did that one as well. What are these? Choose better examples, bro. Prosperity is not. Were you able to suffocate a dog? Base. That's not prosperity. Have I ever been to Mises U? I've not. Planning to perhaps go next year, though. I'll need some... I might have gone this year, but some other plans ended up clashing and none of it ended up happening. But I should be able to just fucking go next year. Why not? Just fuck it. Go. Who cares?
Weapons. It's rather absurd to say that the economic system of what was the world's second leading superpower during the Cold War didn't work or always fails. On the other hand, the shock therapy...
I mean, it did literally fail, though. It did literally... The Soviet Union did literally collapse. That literally did happen. So I don't think it's that absurd. And China, they also fucking liberalized. Who didn't liberalize? North Korea. I suppose maybe he thinks North Korea is a paragon of production and prosperity. Maybe that's his claim. I'm not so sure about that one, though.
Advocated for by economists like Milton Friedman, always led to monetary crises for the countries that implemented it. And we can see how rapid liberalization and austerity is working out today in Argentina, which is to say it produces...
Very well, in fact. Working out very well, in fact. They're much better off than they would have been otherwise. It's working out perfectly well in Argentina.
Lackluster, even negative GDP growth, as well as, shocker, a monetary crisis. Margaret Thatcher's neoliberal market reforms in the 1980s led to record unemployment, as well as placed...
Casimir, why do you keep wanting to fucking print these Discord links? This is not a main video. This is not a main video. Why do you want the Discord links so bad?
The UK on the verge of a monetary crisis. The reality of the economic situation...
I mean, if you want to invite somebody, Casimir, I can give you a link. I can give you as many links as you want to invite people. I just don't want to have like fucking influx every day, you know?
It's not that capitalism and free markets are flawless and proven to always work, and socialist economics always lead to poverty and collapse. That's a nice story, but it isn't in reality that clean. Both economic systems work under the right conditions and policies, under the wrong conditions and policies.
Who thinks capitalism can work under the right conditions? Isn't that a contradiction with everything he's already said up until this point? Did he get like a different ChatGPT instance to make arguments for each of these points? Because that completely contradicts everything else he said in the video, where he's constantly talking about how capitalism doesn't work. Am I insane? Am I going insane here? Have I gone completely bonkers? I don't think I have. Was Thatcher actually evil? Not really. I mean, she was much better than alternatives.
They both fail. Now let's address the question of human nature. Libertarians have a very specific view of human nature, which is an extension of bourgeois liberal individualism.
I think on this point, it's worth talking about what the communists think of human nature. It is brought up there again. It's based on the bourgeois, blah, 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 blah. What is the communist view of human nature? It is that man is predetermined, based upon his social class, his economic class, to engage in certain actions because of the particular logic to that class. That is the communist view on human nature. So, that's why they want there to be a violent revolution. They think there has to be a violent revolution, because they can't convince you through logic. They could never convince you through logic, because you have that bourgeois logic, where you think contradictions are false. And you think the law of the excluded middle is true. So you could never be convinced of proletarian logic, where contradictions are true. That is the communist view of human nature. So, I'll be very interested to see how Mr. fucking Natty Bud Light explains to us how contradictions are in fact true. I'll be very interested to see that part of the video.
Dualism traceable back to Thomas Hobbes. They argue that humans are rational, egoistic individuals who always seek to maximize their own individual self-interest. The whole basis for the stateless theory of capitalism rests upon rational choice theory and egoism. For example, Ludwig von Mises' concept of praxeology, which is the study of human responses to incentives, assumes that...
Nope. Praxeology is not the study of human responses to incentives. No. Nuh-uh. Let's just quickly pull up a very simple series on YouTube. It's called Praxeology 101. Give it a watch, Natty Bud. Give at least some of it a watch. You'll learn what praxeology actually means, at the very least.
Humans are selfish and always seeking to reach their
So that's why he brought up in egoism. No. Praxeology is perfectly capable of dealing with altruists. Perfectly capable.
own self-specified goals. In this process, they are exposed to incentives and disincentives, which modify their behavior by way of rational calculation. The real question then is whether this anthropology is accurate.
Diego Amateur for 1000 CLP, incoming altruist diarrhea. I'm feeling it coming. A tummy's a rumbling.